Good afternoon, Kick-Ass Couples Nation. This is Matthew P. Hoffman coming at you with a Casey and Nooner. We do this every Tuesday from 12 to 12:30. We are glad to have you back with us. Today, we are going to be talking about what the problem is with most marriages. And the problem is not just one thing, it's a couple of things that seem to recur and come up again, and again. And we're going to talk about those today and try to give you some tools, some tips, some tricks, and things that you can do to work through those common issues and make sure those problems that normally come up are not part of your own experience. The Casey and Nooners are something that we do every single Tuesday at 12 to 12:30 across all of our social media platforms. And if you are watching a recording of this and you have a question or want to connect with us, we'll talk to you about that at the end of our time together today. I want to start off by reading the Kick-Ass Couples Nation mission statement because I want everybody to really understand why we do what we do and why we are in this together. KCN is dedicated to awakening the desire of couples to fully demonstrate and experience the highest and purest form of love and fulfillment in their relationship through the mastery of 14 key relationship pillars. We'll be talking about those pillars a little later on as we go through some of these three major issues that are coming up in relationships that seem to be the problems or the sticking points that we run into. Everybody deals with issues and problems in relationships, even though my wife calls me a kick-ass husband, and that is not a self-proclaimed title, but one that she gave me, one that I have to earn every single day. We, after 28, working on 29 years of marriage, deal with issues and problems just like you. Think of the analogy of being a sculptor. And everybody is working on their own masterpiece. We have a chisel, we have a hammer, we're chipping things away. Sometimes small pieces come off, sometimes big chunks, but we're always working to perfect that image of what a great relationship looks like. Doesn't mean we don't have challenges, doesn't mean we don't make mistakes, doesn't mean we're doing small chiseling and constantly refining. And sometimes it's tough to see the progress on what you're doing. But we're going to hit today on three of the most common problems, or really opportunities, because challenges are opportunities. If you look at them like that way, they give you oxygen and energy to tackle, work through together, and overcome. So the first key point I want to talk to you about today is really hits on our second pillar, and that is communication. Communication is one of the most important and foundational pillars or issues in every single relationship, because that determines if we are heard and if we are hearing what our partner wants to talk about. We just did a special KCN live learning session this last Thursday night, and we talked about what communication consists of. It's not just the words that are coming out of your mouth, it's the tone you share and you use. It is your physical posturing, your body position. It is the words that you choose, and it's even the things you don't say. It's the facial expressions you have. There's so many key things that go into effective communication, and we're going to kind of jump into that right now. The second thing that we're going to talk about is what happens when boundaries are overstepped or ignored, and we'll get there in a minute. The simple acronym that I want you all to think about, though, relative to great communication is FATE, FATE. We're going to go through that acronym. The F starts for frequent. Your communication with your partner, your spouse, has to be frequent. That means multiple times throughout the day and in multiple ways. You've got to be communicating. It might be a text, could be a phone call, it could be a note, it could be sitting down face to face or next to each other, it could be FaceTiming. It doesn't matter the vehicle you use to have that communication, but it's got to be frequent, because every time you communicate, you create a touch point, you create a bond. And the more bonds and touch points you create with your partner throughout the day, the stronger it is and the tougher it is to break that bond. That communication is both formal and informal. It's informational, meaning who's picking up the kids, what time are we having to dinner, and it's emotional. It's not just logistic and tactics. Your communication has to be emotional because it's the emotional bonds. It's the things that we feel emotionally or that we feel strongly about, talking about our feelings towards each other, our concerns with somebody, a family member, something that may have come up with a child or an extended family member. That's where our emotions come up. And those are the key opportunities for you to really tune in and focus on your spouse, not just focusing on logistics and the things you have to get done. The second letter of that acronym FATE is attentive. When those sliding door moments occurs, that means when your spouse is opening up and inviting you into communication, are you walking in? Are you engaging? Are you aware that they're saying, hey, let's talk. I want to connect. We need to have some communication on an issue. Or maybe it's just something they're dealing with that they want to relate to you. And you can stand up and pay attention and be attentive to them with your communication. The third letter of this acronym, we have FA, then we have T, timely. Is it in the moment that you need to respond right here and now? Or when is it going to be best received? Could it be later? Is there too much emotion swirling around? So you need to wait and just be a good listener right now and communicate your thoughts or ideas at another time. And the last letter of our acronym, FATEE, is empathetic, empathic. Are you willing to accept influence of them as an indicator? Are you valuing their beliefs, their viewpoint, as highly as your own? That's what empathy is. That's what being empathetic is all about. Are you listening to understand, not to be understood? Are you waiting to speak and really making sure not just the information you get, but are you getting the emotional context in which they're communicating to you right at that moment? Not communicating and putting up with problems and issues is not a solution. It's a lead up to an explosive event that will surely include collateral damage. Having faithful, good, quality, frequent, attentive, timely, and empathic communication, empathetic, is how you ensure that you don't keep stuffing problems under the rug and having them pile up so you trip over them or they explode and cause significant damage in the relationship. I have a question for you. Are there issues that you're avoiding because they're tough conversations and you're not sure where to start? If the answer is yes to that question, then you've got an opportunity to have some more fateful communication in that relationship. Key point number 2, ignoring boundaries or having no boundaries with your partner. Do you know what and where your partner's boundaries are? And those boundaries could be financial, emotional, physical, intellectual, intimate, sexually charged. Where do you want to be pushed, encouraged, and where do you and they want to be left alone? Understanding what those boundaries are, what those triggers are, is a great way to make sure that you don't accidentally step on a landmine and have something blow up in your face, hurt your partner, hurt you as collateral damage, and most importantly, hurt the relationship. So having the conversation about what are the boundaries? What can you do? Where can you push? Where do you need to back off? A key indicator that either you're ignoring some boundaries or your partner is if you or your partner are trying to change each other. Are you trying to mold them in some way to your liking that you think might be better? If that is something that you feel from your partner or you're doing that to your spouse, that means that you're not respecting boundaries. Anytime you try to influence, to push, to change, that's a key indicator that you might not be respecting their boundaries. If you want a list of all 14 pillars to go to matthewphoffman.com under media. You can download that and review those pillars and think about natural boundaries on all 14 of those pillars and the perspectives that they provide your relationship. And you can have that conversation with your partner about what boundaries do we need to respect relative to each of these key relationship qualities in our own relationship. So, what happens when boundaries are ignored or overstepped? What happens is it destroys mutual trust quickly. And I don't know about you, but in my relationship, we are constantly making deposits and working on improving the quality of our relationship, constantly doing small things to increase trust, security, and respect. And when we overstep those boundaries, man, one occurrence can take a baseball bat to the relationship and just destroy the trust that you've worked so hard to build up. And what happens when trust is hurt or damaged or destroyed in a relationship? It can cause withdrawal. That means a partner's not leaning in, they're leaning away or even against, which is the worst thing to happen. Or they might retaliate because they're feeling like they're being violated. They might turn against the relationship, which means they're hunkering down and they're not going to let you in emotionally or even physically into the relationship. No matter what happens, if it's withdrawal, retaliation, or turning against, those are all unhealthy in a relationship. And that's just the impact of what happens when boundaries are ignored or overstepped. I know that you've all felt that. You feel violated, you feel angry. And if you're doing that to their partner, I guarantee you they're feeling the exact same way. So that key point of not respecting boundaries and jumping in and doing something is really a dangerous place to be. So we've talked about great quality communication. We've talked about ignoring boundaries or having no boundaries. And, there's just something that you need to think about in your own relationship is, are you having that respect and are you really doing that? I'm going to share a story with you all. Kim and I were investing in a new business venture, and we had talked about what it was going to look like and what we were willing to do relative to our financial commitment, the time commitment, and what each of our roles and relationship was going to be in this new business venture. And the business venture was going and things were happening and developing, and it was going to take more time and more money than we originally discussed. So we had to come back together and renegotiate, have good communication about the new parameters and where this business investment was lying. We had to renegotiate what we were each comfortable with and investing in dollars and in time and making sure that we could see that investment mature and provide a good return to both of us. And I have to put my hat off to my wife, because in this opportunity of communication, which normally can be a huge problem in most relationships, she came to me with a soft startup. She said, "Hey, I see that, this business opportunity has kind of changed directions. It's not what and where we originally thought it was going to be. So would you mind if we had some time in the near future that we can kind of talk about how we're going to approach it and what we're going to do and what needs to change so we're both on the same page there?" She didn't say, "Hey, we got to talk about this right now." She didn't come with an accusing, pointing finger. She just said, "I would really like if we could have some conversation around this because I think we need to be on the same page." I didn't get offensive. And recently we had a conversation and we talked about, in a calm, healthy way, we got a mutual satisfaction agreement on timing, what our course of action, and what funds that we were willing to spend in this situation. So it was a great example of how we could engage and make sure that we were having good communication about parameters that had changed. We have negotiations and things we talk about in our relationship, and we get agreement. Maybe in the beginning of your marriage or your relationship, you said, "This is how we're going to handle who's making money. This is how we're going to handle who's taking care of the kids. the domestic duties and responsibilities around the house. But seasons change, responsibilities change, priorities change. And those agreements that you negotiate in the very beginning may no longer be valid, or there may need to be some readjustment based on somebody's workload, based on new responsibilities that weren't in the picture when you had those original conversations. But the communication is ever evolving based on the season of life and work and family dynamics and values that you may find yourself in. So a lot of these stories that you've heard around relationships and problem and conflict may sound familiar. Another problem that comes up in relationships that a lot of people don't necessarily like to talk about that can cause stress and anxiety is financial issues. We did a special episode and talked about this in our podcast. That's going to be coming out soon, the Kick-Ass Couples podcast. But finances provide a lot of conflict and really can cause a lot of heartache and pain in relationships. Sometimes there's one major breadwinner in the relationship. If you have children, maybe one spouse is the primary caregiver there. I was overhearing a conversation at the gym the other day where a guy was talking about getting grief from his partner, his spouse, his wife, on being able to go to the gym because she wanted him to stay home and hang out with the kids. And someone else said, "Hey, well, she doesn't work. What's her problem?" And I said, "Whoa, time out. Just because one partner is the primary breadwinner and one partner might be primarily staying at home or be the primary caregiver in the relationship, that is a job that is full-time in the home." My wife and I deliberately discussed and talked about that we had the opportunity for one of us to stay home and not work outside the home because we wanted, and our financial situation allowed for one of us to be the primary caregiver. And I always said respectfully, my wife works full-time in the home. It is a much harder job to be at home full-time with the children than it is to work away from those pressures. I'm not saying it's not difficult to be the primary breadwinner, as many people are in their relationships, but never having a break, never having a lunch hour, never being able to step away and have downtime is super difficult. And I honor and respect, and probably we even talked about this, my wife and I did, in the middle of it, I didn't give her enough inspiration, recognition for all the hard work that she was doing by being the primary caregiver in our relationship. Because guys, hands down, it is a much harder job. There's many men that stay home and are those primary caregiver with the kids or work from home, and they have the flexibility to be able to do that, and their wife or partner may work outside the home or do something else as well. So there's all kinds of different dynamics, but the problem is we've got to have good communication about the issues, whether they're financial, whether they're about boundaries, whether they're about having the quality communication. So when you think about these issues that we've spoken about today, do any of them sound familiar? Here's a question I have. Are you facing and handling and overcoming these issues that you face with quality communication that's calm, respectful, that's timely, it's frequent, it's attentive, it's empathetic? It means you're willing to take influence from your partner as you have communication on these issues. Or are you sweeping them under the rug? Are you putting them to the side? And is that ever increasing pile of issues causing you stress, anxiety, or unhappiness? I want to let you know that I'm here. I'm a relationship coach, and Kick-Ass Couples Nation was created to help you navigate those difficult issues. We have an incredible Kick-Ass Couples assessment that you can find out. You can rate yourself, you can rate your partner and your spouse on how well you're doing in the relationship. Go to our website, MatthewPHoffman.com. Take the assessment. You can assess yourself, you can assess your partner, then you can have your partner assess you as well, so that you each have something to sit down and talk about how well you're doing on all of those 14 pillars. How do you think you're doing? How does your partner think you're doing? And any place you get less than a 9 on, it means you have an opportunity for increased communication and to work on the skills of getting there. If you want to hear our podcast, my wife and I host together. She's a guest on these Casey and Nooners from time to time. Kimberly, we host the Kick-Ass Couples podcast, and we talk to relationship couples who have mastered relationships, and what do they do, and how do they do, and how do they overcome the challenges, and how do they work through those issues on commitment, communication, conflict, and problem resolution. We also are starting to do special episode podcasts where we talk about difficult issues and how to approach them. We've got coming out a special episode on dealing with grief and loss. How do you effectively deal with those things in your relationship so you can best support your partner if they're going through it, and so you don't get torpedoed and hurt in your relationship when there is a tragic loss of a loved one or a job or a home or someone that's important to you in your life. So we hope you'll listen to the podcast, come to the website, and we're here to answer your questions. If you need questions answered, if you're not sure where to start, please email us at info@kickasscouplesnation.com, or for a better understanding of where your relationships, take that assessment or join us in Kick-Ass Couples Nation. If you join us on our Instagram post or Facebook at Kick-Ass Couples Nation, every 2 weeks, we do a live learning webinar, and we go deep and where you can learn more about these pillars and how to apply. We give you tools. We do a fun thing called a dynamic date where you'll get a great form and it'll lead you through how to create a dynamic date with your partner so you can start working and making progress, leaving the pain behind and getting closer to your own relationship nirvana. So I want to close by sharing a little story with you today. It's about being on a mountainside climbing journey. So if you think of everybody that's in a relationship, we're all climbing up a mountain. And a lot of these people are climbing differently. Some people have a lot of baggage with them, things they're not addressing, things they're not willing to let go, things that they insist on carrying on their journey. So if you're tasked with climbing up a mountain and you have a lot of baggage, imagine how difficult it's going to be. You're not going to be able to take the steepest route. You're going to have to zigzag or go the easy way. You're going to have to stop and rest and put your burdens down because they're heavy and they're exhausting and you just don't have a lot of energy. The path you choose is going to determine how fast you ascend and make progress. If you're trying to go straight up and you have a lot of baggage, even if you don't have a lot of baggage, but you're trying to gain big ground, it's going to be difficult. So choosing the right path of how you choose to go, how do you choose to communicate? How do you choose to relate to your partner? All these things are going to relate to how well you ascend and become a master of your relationship. Also, what kind of shape are you in? Are you investing in your relationship? Are you making deposits in those emotional bank accounts? Is there high trust, high security, high appreciation, incredible intimacy? Those are all things that determine the health and wellness of your relationship and how fit you are for the journey that's ahead of you. If you are not fortified and strong in those key relationship pillars, you are going to make slow progress. You're going to have a lot of baggage and you're going to be taking a tough route. So if you want slow and steady progress and you don't want to burn out too quickly, your relationship is a marathon. It is not a sprint. We can help prepare you for the journey so it's straighter, more direct, easier, and so you're much more likely to reach that first summit quickly and keep climbing till you reach and achieve the next summit. We're here to be alongside you, to be your coach, to be your partner. We hope you reach out with what we can do to help you in your journey. Thanks for joining us today and talking about the 3 critical things that are the biggest problems that people face in a relationship. And we want you to remember one thing, that happily ever after does not just happen, it is on purpose. We'll see you out there. Join us here next Tuesday for our next KCN Nooner 12 every single Tuesday. We'll see you then.